In this video, we uncover a true crime story so shocking and unbelievable that no movie could ever compare. What started as an ordinary day spiraled into a nightmare filled with lies, betrayal, and unimaginable horror. Derek Campos is the name of this strange child. He was so scared that even his mother was scared of him. Things got so bad for the woman that she felt trapped in her own home at one point. How could a little boy scare his mom? Why did Derek act this way? What did he do to become such an uncontrollable monster? Before we continue, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more real-life crime documentaries, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. And tell me in the comments, which country are you watching from? I always find it incredible to see how far these stories travel and how many people around the world care about seeking justice and uncovering the truth behind real-life cases. Your support truly means more than you know. It's what allows these stories to reach new audiences, to spread awareness, and to remind us all why it's so important to keep searching for answers, even when justice takes years to arrive. So thank you for being here, for caring, and for continuing to stand for truth. Now let's get back to the story. The remainder of this case is set in Marshfield, Wisconsin, where Derek Campos was born on November 13, 1991. During her first year of college, Shelley Leitz was pursuing a nursing degree when she became pregnant with her son at the age of 19. The young woman was utterly unprepared for parenting at the moment and felt too young to have children. She felt that everything had happened too fast. When her tummy began to grow, she hadn't had time to appreciate her adult position or finish her degree. However, Shelley made the decision to keep the child and drastically alter her way of life. The father of the young woman's unborn child also disappeared as soon as he learnt of the pregnancy, leaving her to raise her child alone. Shelley's entire world changed when Derek was born. She loved her young kid very much. The child was adorable as an adult. His plump cheeks were enough to make people smile. Shelley couldn't stop celebrating that she had made the correct choice and wasn't scared of any problems as she looked at her son. Tragic events occurred when Derek Campos was only 7 weeks old. The boy's condition worsened. He contracted pneumonia and a serious respiratory virus. Doctors were concerned about the baby's survival because of his poor health. Every minute mattered, so the infant was transported to a hospital in Minnesota immediately. The idea that she might lose her boy filled Shelley with utter despair. She prayed that he would be able to hold on the whole way to the hospital. Thankfully, a miracle occurred and Derek survived. Shelley's enjoyment was incredible. She was incredulous that her young son would get well and keep making her happy. But Derek's future was drastically altered by his serious sickness and the fact that he had almost died. Shelley made the decision then and there that her son would have everything he desired at any time. The idea of losing her child frightened her. She carried that fear with her forever. Shelley wanted to do everything she could for Derek. Of course, this looks fantastic at first. Every typical parent wants to give their child all they need and make them happy. But in Shelley's instance, things took a slightly different turn. Everything went really nicely at first. After he healed, Derek developed into a regular toddler who enjoyed taking walks in the park with his mother, learning to ride a bike, and playing with a ball. He was like other children. However, Shelley kept spoiling Derek more and more. The boy began to take advantage of the fact that he was the center of the world as he grew older. The actual issues started at that point, because Derek showed certain behavioral problems even as a young child. The youngster was irritable by the time he was 7 years old. He was quite rebellious and never followed his mother's instructions. The child went much beyond normal juvenile tantrums, always arguing with her and always standing his ground. Shelley once went grocery shopping with her son in a shopping center. Derek noticed toy trucks in the exhibit as they went by the toy department. Naturally, people were drawn to the vehicles because they were so brilliant. The young child wanted a vehicle, of course. He sprinted over to the toy shelf, picked up a truck, and gave it to his mother to purchase. Derek had enough toy trucks at home, Shelley replied calmly as she put the truck back. She refused to buy the truck because they were there for groceries. Derek launched his greatest tantrum ever instead of following his mother. Grabbing the toy truck, he began pounding it on the ground until it broke. Derek's outburst continued even after the truck broke into hundreds of pieces. That's not all, though. The child threatened to smash another toy in the store if his mother didn't buy him a truck. Shelley was taken aback. In the store, her son created a commotion. Other customers looked at the boy and shook their heads in disapproval as he yelled so loudly. It dawned on Shelley that she ought to have given Derek some ground rules and made it clear that such behavior was not acceptable. She didn't, however, because she had vowed to give her son whatever he desired when he was just 7 weeks old and on the verge of death. Shelley thus purchased the toy truck for him and paid for the one he damaged individually. Derek discovered he could ask his mother anything after that store encounter. This behavior continued again over time. The boy's outbursts weren't all he did. He started acting hostilely. Additionally, Derek would scream and pound his fists at his mother whenever she attempted to explain something to him. All of his desires were eventually granted. Shelley encouraged her son's misbehavior since she consistently catered to him. Derek's life lacked the idea of discipline. He was the perfect example of a pampered child. Shelley noticed several strange things about her son throughout the years. She noticed that Derek wasn't playing with his toys like other kids one day. He would just sit and look at them after taking them out of the box and arranging them properly in front of himself. He would put the toys back in the box when he was bored. Derek also approached eating in an odd way. He never used his hands to eat anything. Sandwiches, donuts, burgers, and potato chips. He used a fork to eat them all. Maybe he didn't like touching food with his hands, or something else was wrong. It was something odd, Shelley said. She never considered the possibility that her son might have a disease requiring medical treatment or special needs. No, she only described her son as eccentric. And all of these things that might have seemed little at first but might have required further research were just disregarded. Derek also had difficulties at school. He had trouble making friends and interacting with other children. As a result, he experienced extreme loneliness and social isolation as a child. Occasionally, he would act aggressively towards adults or other children. Derek would clench his fists and begin trembling violently if someone did anything he didn't like, which appeared weird. When a classmate once visited, Derek pulled out all of his toys, arranged them in his normal manner, and began to gaze at them. Derek didn't like it at all when the other child reached for a toy automobile. He just didn't know how to share, therefore he didn't want anyone else to touch his belongings. Derek became truly enraged at the guest's naive effort to steal his toy, claiming repeatedly that those were his belongings and that he had forbidden anyone from touching them. He pounced at the youngster, knocked him to the ground, and began hitting him. At last, Shelley heard the sound coming from the child's chamber. Derek was left alone in the room to play with his toys after she rushed in, took her son off, and then led the other youngster to the living room. In an attempt to hide her son's actions, Shelley said that there had been a small altercation between the boys when the classmate's mother arrived to pick him up. Consequently, her son's actions went unpunished once more. Shelley got a boyfriend when Derek turned 9. Although he had heard from Shelley about his peculiarities, Robert had not yet met her son despite the fact that they had been dating for a few months. The problem is that the mother was only worried about Derek's response to having a new man in the house. Robert behaved strangely when he eventually met the child. He went up to the boy and, as soon as he did, parted his hair to examine his scalp. When Shelley inquired about the situation, Robert smirked and clarified that he was searching for Derek's head's 666 mark. The adult's introduction to the pampered child seemed strange. However, Shelley's response was even worse. She endorsed Robert's joke despite being aware of her son's behavioral problems, stating that Derek was undoubtedly a demon. It's clear that the man's tone for his first encounter with his lover's son was very inappropriate. Their relationship only worse after that. After Robert and Shelley were married, the husband finally moved into his wife's home and made the decision that he should now set regulations there. Of course, the man was certainly correct in certain aspects. In order for a child to learn what is good and what is harmful, some discipline in the home is natural. But Robert made a mistake in strategy. He was extremely stern with Derek from the beginning, giving him instructions and enforcing the regulations with a stoic hand. When Derek was around 10 years old, he had never adhered to any kind of discipline in his life, and was unaware that such a thing even existed. The youngster didn't understand why this man had moved into their home, and was attempting to impose his rules on him. His mother had never disciplined him, and had always granted him every wish. It is therefore not surprising that Derek started to rebel even more and tell his mother how unhappy he was. Shelley sought to please her son in every way, rather than teaching him simple things. In the absence of Robert and his regulations, the mother made every effort to ensure Derek's happiness. She gave him presents, attention, praise, and everything else he could possibly want. She expressed regret for her husband's actions and made an effort to make up for the new restrictions and discipline that were imposed. Derek received conflicting messages from the mother's position. Shelley was too tender while Robert was too severe. Derek then just waited for Robert to go to work before beginning to control his mother. Shelley purchased a new PlayStation system for her kid for Christmas. The child excitedly anticipated Christmas morning because he had been demanding this gift for a long time. Derek opened his eyes and immediately went downstairs to the Christmas tree. He wanted to open all of his gifts right away, but Robert held him back. As is customary in a typical household, the dad said that they would all eat breakfast together first. Derek wouldn't be permitted to unwrap his gifts till then. Derek detested scrambled eggs, so he sat the youngster at the table and put a dish of them in front of him. He claimed that the youngster would not get up from the table until the plate was empty. Derek was not going to eat anything he didn't like, of course. He did nothing but stare at the plate in silence. All day, Derek sat at the table. He remained silent and didn't even take a bite out of the eggs. The protest against Robert was heated and hushed. For many kids, Christmas is a magical time of year. Derek's vacation was damaged beyond recognition. On Christmas, the boy went to bed without any food, entertainment, or gifts. All day long, he didn't eat a single crumb. Robert went to work the following day. The only people left in the house were Derek and his mother. Shelley performed her usual thing. She apologized to her son for what Robert had done, tried to reassure him with a hug, and said he could now open his gifts with composure. Derek approached the Christmas tree gingerly. He started destroying his brand-new PlayStation after opening it. The boy shattered everything in his path. Because of what her husband had done, he was furious and intended to punish his mother. Furthermore, what did Shelley do? She always did that. To give to her kid, she went to the store and purchased an additional game console. Naturally, you can only feel sorry for the child in this Christmas scenario who was denied his eagerly anticipated vacation and punished without cause. Given that Robert's treatment of Derek verged on abuse, the adult's actions cannot be deemed normal, and Shelley watched it happen in silence rather than defending her child. Especially on Christmas, she should never have permitted Robert to abuse her kid in such a manner. Derek's frail psyche began to break down, which is not surprising given the inconsistent actions of the grown-ups. Shelley needed to discipline her son and establish some limits. Robert wouldn't have had as many excuses to make fun of him. Family ties only deteriorated after Christmas. Derek matured and became a teenager. He started to violently confront Robert after previously tolerating him and then venting all of his frustrations on his mother. Shelley was always caught between her spouse and her son. The woman was too afraid to confront Derek head-on. She was aware that she would be left alone with the furious teenager as soon as Robert left for work. At home, Shelley felt like a prisoner. Since Derek was essentially the head of the household, she had to continuously tread carefully to prevent inciting his rage and aggressiveness towards her. At the same time, Shelley kept her head in the sand and ignored the incident. The mother apparently thought that everything would work itself out, but it didn't. As Derek grew older, the tone of his arguments with Robert changed. Following each altercation, Shelley apologized for Robert's actions and words while also covertly praising her son. Regardless of Derek's actions, she continued to attempt to use her love and care to mask the hurts created by her spouse. But eventually, Shelley decided she had had enough and that she needed to make an effort. She went to see a psychotherapist with her son. Unfortunately, the woman was unlucky here as well. Shelley became an amateur therapist. The doctor promptly diagnosed Derek with depression without properly assessing his behavior, and that was the end of it. Depression might have been the boy's primary issue, but it was improbable. However, the doctor concluded the discussion by prescribing antidepressants to the teen. Of course, everything only got worse. Derek essentially stopped talking and retreated inside himself, rather than exhibiting any positive behavioral improvements. He just lost touch with reality and further distanced himself from his colleagues. However, he continued to act aggressively and with fury. They only got worse. It appears that he was not a good candidate for the drug. A few more years went by. Derek and Robert's altercation ended in the boy's favor. When Shelley's husband couldn't handle it, they split up. Although there may have been further problems between the spouses, Derek had just turned 18. He had just finished high school. A significant event in his life occurred at this time. He acquired a girlfriend. Derek had never been in a romantic relationship. He just didn't let himself become close to anyone, much less make friends. But compared to the majority of Derek's peers, this girl was very different. She went by Maisie McCullough. Despite being 2 years younger, she went to the same school. At just 16, Maisie was Derek's total opposite. She was said to be exceedingly gregarious, kind, and friendly. After graduating from high school, Maisie intended to become a doctor. The young folks immediately found common ground because, as they say, opposites attract. It was incredible because Derek had at last found someone with whom he could open up and feel comfortable. Shelley had never witnessed her son's happiness before. He grew really considerate and perceptive. His rage and violence began to subside, and a smile never left his face. The mother was ecstatic since she secretly believed her son would never be happy and would never be able to love someone close to him. Everything went perfectly at first. However, 16-year-old Maisie informed Derek she was pregnant shortly after they started dating. The child couldn't believe it and was in total amazement. Actually, the unexpected news delighted the young man. He assured Maisie that he was prepared to become a parent and would take all precaution to raise his child in a healthy environment. Derek seems to have at last met a partner with whom he could be authentic. The woman encouraged Maisie to move in with them as soon as she found out she would soon be a grandma. The girl had lost her mother when she was very little. Her father, who worked long hours and was frequently away from home, reared her. Maisie accepted and moved in with Derek, knowing she would soon want assistance with the baby. They became engaged at that very time. Gabriel Campos, a boy, was born to Maisie 9 months later. Additionally, Shelley and Derek were ecstatic. The young man tried to be a good father and showed genuine concern for his youngster from the beginning. He loved Gabriel. Derek quickly became a stay-at-home father after graduating from high school, spending all of his time with his little kid. He bathed him, played with him, changed his own nappies, fed him with Maisie, and put him to bed. Naturally, Maisie went back to school when the baby was born. Derek was even content that all of the duties for their son were on him, even if she spent a lot of time in class. Everything went well for a while. Everyone got along well and was happy. However, Derek's peculiar behavior then began to reappear. The young guy now made the decision to create a specific regularity in the home, just like his mother's new spouse, Robert, did. Derek made everyone in the family follow certain standards as his son became older and had a regular routine. Everything has to be completed in the same order and at a precisely specified time. The dawn, day, and evening were now the same for everyone. For instance, the curtains were one of the controversial topics. Derek insisted on having the drapes closed in every room during the day because, for whatever reason, he didn't want natural light to penetrate the house. However, Shelley wasn't accustomed to living in the dark. She would open the blinds and go downstairs. Derek would then dash into the living room, draw back the curtains, and begin to argue. As she had done throughout her life, Shelley eventually consented and catered to her kid. Derek was adamant about sticking to his schedule. His fiancée, Maisie, was the target of his strictest restrictions. She was frequently reprimanded, yelled at, or criticized for her misdeeds. Derek became quite domineering and started degrading Maisie after their son was born. He began to dictate to her where she could go and who she could see. Maisie was now prohibited from moving without Derek's consent. Maisie was only permitted to go to school and then work a part-time job before returning home. It was obvious to the average person that Derek's need to be in charge of everything was excessive. However, Shelley did nothing except observe and never get involved in her son's relationship with his fiancée. She never made an effort to shield Maisie or to point out to Derek that his actions were inappropriate. Shelley's fear of her son was simple. She was nevertheless not immune to her heir's wrath because of this behavior. Derek, on the other hand, started to become upset with his mother, criticizing her drunkenness and calling her a pitiful failure. The woman started drinking gradually after splitting from Robert and lamenting her life's lack of value, and soon she found it impossible to go a day without it. It never occurred to Shelley that her son would turn against her. Hearing all of these cruel taunts was extremely distressing for the mother, but she lacked the courage and will to confront her son. She just gave Derek the freedom to treat her and Maisie as he pleased once more. When Shelley came home one day, she entered the kitchen to discover her son sitting at the table, holding a gun. Although he had never previously expressed any interest in firearms, he had purchased an AK-47. Shelley was truly taken aback by this. She asked what was happening, of course, and received a response that chilled her to the bone. Derek threatened to shoot his mother or slit her throat one night, so he pointed the gun at her and advised her to sleep with one eye open. Then Shelley understood that her son, whom she adored and lavished with love, could easily kill her. Shelley was really appalled. She set a deadbolt on her bedroom door while Derek wasn't home to prevent her son from entering at night. The woman rarely left her room unless it was absolutely essential. When Derek began inquiring about Shelley's life insurance policy, her anxieties intensified. In the event that his mother passed away, the kid did not want to be left penniless. Her drunkenness then got worse since she felt like a real prisoner in her own house. In an attempt to soothe her emotional scars, Shelley shut herself in her room and drank. The house was occupied by Maisie and little Gabriel, in addition to Shelley, and Derek's fiancée was the one who took the brunt of it all. The boy became a true despot in the home. The women conversed one day when he wasn't home. Both of them expressed dissatisfaction with Derek's actions and concluded that they had to fire him. Without him, they could handle the youngster. Furthermore, Derek's conduct was becoming worse every day, so Gabriel would feel safer if his father lived far away. Maisie and Shelley made the decision to expel the lone man from the house, but they quickly changed their minds because they were too terrified of him. Lucy was Shelley's Labrador dog. Derek's love for Lucy was never genuine. The mess the dog's fur created irritated him. Shelley had to visit the hospital one day for a planned gallbladder removal procedure. She found out that her dog was gone when she got home from a brief hospital stay. Derek gave the mother a chilly, icy gaze in response to her question about Lucy's whereabouts. Then he added nonchalantly that the dog got hit by a car after running out onto the road. Lucy is said to have died while he was taking her to the veterinarian. Derek saw no cause for alarm and didn't understand why his mother was upset because the veterinarians cremated the dog and then he disposed of the ashes. Shelley felt in her heart that her son was lying. Lucy was a well-mannered adult dog. There would never have been any reason for her to run out onto the road. It seemed to Shelley that her son had merely disposed of the animal in order to harm her. He might have simply taken her far from home and left her there, or he might have shot her somewhere in the woods. However, the mother remained mute once more and chose not to confront Derek about his lying. It continued for 2 years. Derek imposed his own rules, dominated everything around him, and frightened and insulted everyone in the house. He was confined to the same house as Maisie and Shelley, who had to endure this nightmare every day. Maisie had recently graduated from high school and turned 18. The girl then made the decision that she had had enough. No matter what, she had to leave that house. Gabriel was 2 years old already. Maisie often expressed her desire to leave Derek to Shelley. She didn't know how to do it, but she couldn't stand the humiliations and abuse any longer. The girl feared she would be harmed by Derek. She also realized that it would only get worse if she brought Gabriel along since his father would lose it. However, she also couldn't abandon the infant with this monster. After much preparation, Maisie eventually just left the house and never came back. She genuinely thought it would be safer and better for Gabriel, so she left her son with Shelley. Maisie believed she was at last free once she stepped outside the house. Unfortunately, the story took a much darker turn, so her freedom was short-lived. Derek started acting strangely as soon as he got home and noticed Maisie was gone. His first action, something he had never done before, was to open all the curtains and let in the sunlight. Then he began to pace the living room while repeatedly saying the same thing. Derek insisted that he wouldn't give up the child, adding, "I won't let another man be the father of my son." For some reason, Derek was obsessed with the notion that Maisie was having an affair, that she was seeing another guy behind his back, and that this man would nurture his baby, even if Gabriel was at home. As usual, Shelley stayed out of the way and observed Derek from the sidelines. Her only concern was that her son might make a stupid mistake. The woman even called Robert, her ex-husband, to seek guidance. The man remarked that Derek was likely sad again and that it would be best to leave him alone for the time being, seemingly unwilling to deal with other people's issues. On September 7, 2012, Shelley spent the entire day out. She had been to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. Maisie's car was parked in the driveway close to their house when she got back. Doubt was her initial thought. The girl probably hadn't come back on her own. Then, in a panic, Shelley saw that the front door was open, and Shelley temporarily relaxed when she entered the house and noticed a trail of blood flowing through it. She believed Derek had lost his temper once more, cut himself, and possibly broken a mirror. She proceeded down the corridor that went to the lavatory, following the trail of blood. A sizable puddle of blood had oozed out from beneath the door, which was closed. Shelley opened the door and stood still. Maisie lay with her neck slit in the bathtub, covered with blood. Sadly, it was already too late. Due to the death of 18-year-old Maisie McCullough, Shelley was unable to assist the youngster. Shelley's body froze in terror. Her legs were immobile when she tried to run. She had the impression of being in a scary film. The toilet situation was happening even if it didn't seem real. Maisie had passed away. Her son had done it, and the mother knew it. Then Shelley thought about Gabriel, her grandson. Is it possible that Derek hurt his own child? Derek and the boy were not in the house at all. Shelley reported the event to emergency services right away. After conducting another search of the residence, the arriving police brought Shelley to the station so they could get her statement. As the police asked routine inquiries, the woman, seemingly in a panic, repeatedly stated that Derek had stolen Gabriel. Then it dawned on her. She saw a clear vision of her angry son killing her grandson, and then killing himself. Shelley started to shake with panic because the vision was so clear. She informed the cops of her suspicions right away. In actuality, the cops were clueless as to Derek's whereabouts and abilities. All they knew was that he had probably run away with the boy. The father and son were the target of a major search. They didn't want to discover them after a tragedy had already happened. Derek's face appeared in every news story. Throughout the night and into the early hours of the following day, the hunt went on. The man they were searching for had just checked into a room with a little child, according to a motel clerk who called the police at 5 in the morning. Police officers hurried to the motel right away. Since Derek was accused of killing Maisie and abducting the child, they were prepared to capture the suspect with their weapons. He was armed too, the police knew. They were just uncertain as to whether Gabriel was still alive and whether the dad had hurt his own son. However, it was much easier than that. Derek left with his hands up as the group were ready to storm the motel room. After realizing he couldn't get out after hearing the commotion in the corridor, he silently turned himself in to the police. 2-year-old Gabriel was found inside the room, alive and unharmed, when they placed him in handcuffs. Fortunately, he had not been harmed. Derek was granted permission to make a phone call before being taken in for interrogation. The young man apologized to his mother, Shelley, over the phone for the way things had gone. He didn't intend to do that, but there was nothing he could do about it now. For the first time in his life, Derek told his mother he loved her at the end of the call and asked her to look after Gabriel. As soon as the police started looking into it, they discovered Maisie's blood in Derek's car and on his clothing. The young man had likely realized they would find him anyhow, so he hadn't even bothered to throw away the murder weapon, the knife. The severity of the assault was discovered after Maisie's autopsy. Her jugular vein and carotid artery were cut off. She was stabbed in the back as well. Maisie had fought back against her attacker, as evidenced by the multiple defensive wounds on her hands. In a sense, the case was over. Derek was charged with intentional homicide because all the evidence led to him. Shelley, the young man's mother, tried her hardest to get her son out of jail while he was awaiting trial. As usual, she attempted to make things right, and even made plans to testify in Derek's favor. A mother's love is said to have no limits. Shelley was anxious to get Derek out of jail because she didn't want to be the next person to take Maisie's place after he killed an 18-year-old girl, the mother of his child. But Shelley was unable to change anything, no matter how hard she tried. She even met with Derek's public attorney to come up with a strategy because there was too much evidence against him. Derek subsequently accepted a plea bargain in exchange for a life sentence with the chance of parole after 40 years, despite his initial not guilty plea. However, the tale did not stop there. When Derek found out he would be incarcerated for the most of his life following the guilty decision, he bribed another prisoner more than $4,000 to serve as a hitman. Derek thought Maisie was having an affair. Therefore, he wanted the man to kill her. Derek was charged with attempted solicitation, even though the assassination attempt was fortunately unsuccessful. Shelley was granted full custody of her grandson, Gabriel, following the trial. What matters most now is that the mother avoids making the same parenting mistakes she has in the past. Shelley was unable to go back to her house because of the scars from the past. She avoided the media and the internet by spending a few days with a friend before moving out of town. She has lived a reclusive life ever then and has only been interviewed once. According to Shelley, she hasn't had the energy to go to Maisie's burial. This tragedy was the subject of the documentary Evil Lives Here, My Son's Prisoner. Shelley discusses Derek's early years and the crime he committed in it. She herself thinks her son had no intention of killing Maisie. At some point, he just lost control and reached for the knife. As of right now, Derek Campos is now Gabriel Campos. He remains incarcerated in a Wisconsin prison where he is serving a life term. Online debates concerning responsibility for Derek's criminal behavior are still going strong. Some criticize the mother's actions, claiming that she failed to hold her kid responsible and catered to his desires. Others use data to support the woman. There are a lot of parents in the world that raise their kids badly, yet they don't turn into criminals. What, then, was the deciding element in this instance? Was the parenting bad? Or did Derek become violent and emotionally unstable due to a harsh deception from nature? Thank you for watching and for being part of this true crime community. Your support means everything. Every view, every like, and every comment helps us continue to expose the truth and bring awareness to the realities many choose to ignore. Together, we're not just watching stories. We're keeping memories alive and standing up for justice in a world where silence often protects the guilty. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, tap the bell icon, and turn on all notifications so you never miss our latest true crime documentaries, intense investigations, and chilling real-life cases. Don't forget to like, share, and comment below. Your thoughts, theories, and feedback help shape the stories we tell and push these cases further into the light. Every interaction brings us one step closer to the truth. Until next time, stay safe, stay vigilant, and trust your instincts. Evil doesn't always hide in the shadows. Sometimes it walks beside us wearing a friendly smile. Keep your eyes open, protect your peace, and never stop searching for the truth, because in the end, awareness is the strongest weapon we have against the darkness.